welcome to this first NGO Quick Guide mini webinar for NGOs where your project should be actually an investment. Some of you who follow MZN International's webinars and events may have heard that about a year and a half ago, we started a investor advisory firm called Human Planet Ventures, and this is it. And since then, we've been working actively with investors all around the world and are ready to receive additional pitches now after 2 or 3 investments successfully done last year. So what's it all about? This webinar is in true investment style, a very short one. I think we have a grand total of time of half an hour. Is that right, Jules?
Correct.
Of which we're already 5 minutes in, probably, so 25 minutes to go. I've got only 4 or 5 slides for you today, so very, very quick, and then we open up to questions, and that should be all that we do today, and hopefully that serves you as an inspiration. All right, let's kick it off, shall we?
Great, let's get started.
So just to avoid any confusion, Human Planet Ventures, with this iris logo you see here on the left side of the screen, is a specialized investor advisory boutique, as they call it, or a specialized advisory firm focused on offering development and aid beneficial investments to venture capitalists and other investments, I should say, starting at 1 million euros, which is pretty much the same in dollars these days, actually. It's a wholly owned subsidiary by MZN International. In a nutshell, HP, as we call it internally, is the investor and for-profit side of this group that is now MZN owned, whereas MZN, of course, remains a social non-profit enterprise, here to help NGOs working better and being better funded and to get better strategies. So the idea is that the funding support of MZN is being complemented by the investor support on HP side, and of course the profits that HP generates are in the long term subsidizing what MZN does, so that we make our services actually cheaper each year. Cheaper each year. And Jules never gets tired of saying that with training for MZN partners, we're already there. They're already free of charge. So the strategy is already a little bit working. Let's aside this confusion, let's dive into the issue. And some of you may well be known to investment. Some of you may have heard of impact investment. Jules, can you just help me? Can you actually see my cursor when I do this, or does this not translate into the...
Yes, you can see your cursor, Chris.
Oh, fantastic. That works then. Some of you might, obviously, most of you will be familiar with donations. Some of you are interested in know what impact investment is or heard of it. Some are heard of the term socially responsible investment, and obviously most of you will have heard of what's investing. And we've created this little mini grid here that hopefully helps you locate what is what. I think it's worthwhile understanding briefly in that before we dive into the question if you have a project that should actually be an investment, not another development project. So let's go. Traditional investing, as you may do it privately as well, or you may not, is you're going to invest into something and you're looking for your capital, that is your investment principal that you're investing up front, and your investment itself to pay a profit. And that is pretty much, sorry, I don't know why it's doing that. There we go. That is pretty much the purview of traditional investing, where you're looking for a profit and you're looking for it back. Worthwhile to remember that socially responsible investing and impact investment are also looking for their original investment to be paid back, plus a return, plus a profit. That is obviously not the case with donations, where the donor is quite happy to part with the money permanently. And that is what most NGOs are used to. Now, there are socially responsible impact investment where investors are seeking a reduction of social and or ecological risks. So that is what we normally call a socially responsible investing, where investors are saying, look, we are investing traditionally, we are looking for a return on our investment, as you can see in this column, but we'd like to reduce the harm that our investment is maybe doing to the planet or to the society. We are definitely conscious of that. The difference between socially responsible investment and impact investing is that on impact investing, the investors are seeking a measurable social and ecological impact. So this is the difference between investors trying to reduce the negative impact and investors trying to increase the positive impact. And in fact, that's also what donations are doing, of course, but social impact investing as well. So for my work over the last 15 years with NGOs and investors, I found that a lot of people in our sector make no differentiation between donations and investing at the same time, and therefore never even consider that they could attract an investment. And we can go into examples if the questions lead us to this. There is a scale up from impact investing to socially responsible investment to traditional investment that may sit a project here. The basic test here is, do you have something that provides a return? And if so, it could fall into that category here. And of course, they can be mixed. We've had projects last year where we did an impact investment with a return of capital, but also part of a donation. A part of it was donated. So these things are not set in these categories. Good, moving on. What type of investor are we actually talking about here? So Human Planet here worked now for a number of years and sort of differentiated, and we are now approaching a certain type of investor. And there's this list here on the right is not exclusive, but I'm trying to limit it for the purpose of a half-an-hour mini webinar. And basically, the type of investor you might be looking for here is someone or a institution that has experience with investing in what they call emerging markets, has a pretty simple governance structure. So not a complicated pension fund, not an institutional fund where because the type of investment is often set in the statutes so that they cannot invest more than X%, for example, in emerging markets or in developing countries. That prevents them from doing what they might discuss. There must be a certain risk attitude. That has never really been a problem, but it's worthwhile mentioning. Ticket size, you want to start at 1 million, because anything below that, the admin costs associated to that, the notary costs, the contracting costs, are not really worth it. You're talking about transaction costs between 25 to 125,000 euros for various legal contracts and things like that. So it's not really worth it if it's below 1 million. And obviously, what really helps if the investor is willing to reduce their return for impact. So in our experience, there's more than sufficient investors to match these and other selection criteria really, but all of them, literally every single one, lacks the time to appraise a development or humanitarian project properly. And that's where AHP comes in, where we help NGOs prepare the pitch deck, free of charge, by the way, and we canvas this and carry this to our investors, whom we meet on a monthly call, and say, hey, we have a project which we know from your portfolio would fit in really well, and you hit the criteria. So that's pretty much how it works. So the question to you then is, and then I'm almost done here for today already, is, what is an investable project? Pretty much the title of this talk today. The number one question is there a emerging, possibly, revenue stream? Now, this is a difficult question. Revenue stream basically means, is there any money that can come from this? But that also includes the reduction of risks. So, for example, we've invested into a large wind park in Central Africa last year. And the wind park in and of itself was funded entirely by normal institutional investors. But they were worried about, local and community friction, the communities not accepting the project, possibly even hurting it through, not carrying it, through vandalism, through conflict arising. So the revenue stream that they asked for was protected by donations to local NGOs that worked with communities in and around this wind park and the solar park. So the investors here had a measurable interest to protect a revenue stream And for that, they were quite willing to reduce their profit by donating and by impact investing into certain things. So one of the other things they've done, for example, is build a food storage facility powered with that energy. That in itself became a little investment in and of itself. Helped the local farmers enormously. So did, by the way, using part of the energy for water irrigation. And all this without any governmental or donor input. So the first question can be tricky, even if at first you kind of don't see that there is a revenue, that there is no business underlying this. If it protects an existing or a planned business, then that's already investable. The other one is, and this is more form, can it really be framed, can it be worded in a generally accepted investment themes? And by that, I mean, can you use the language of investments? We have seen time and time again where investors approached NGOs saying, can you do this and that? And they just talked a different language. They just spoke very differently, and they couldn't really communicate effectively. So if you are able to frame this in accepted investment themes, if you recognize that the investment fund will probably also have to ask its investors for the money, and if it can further beyond that be linked to the SDGs with clear impact, then you will make the transaction a lot more feasible and a lot more likely to occur. Really important and not too dissimilar from many development projects is it possible to set a clear track record, consistently measure it, and compare the metrics? That impact tracking, particularly for impact investors and other investors, is really, really important. And it must be very simple, very clear. Same thing, investors sometimes happy to accept a trade-off between financial return and impact, which is to say they're happy to reduce their return if there's a positive impact for planet or people or both. But is this quantifiable? How much are we talking about? Can we measure that? Likewise, what's the market looking like? What's the comparable rival products or services, and what does the market look like you're looking to invest? That's also important for the investor to assess the opportunity costs of doing this investment. And finally, how does this investment fit into their wider portfolio? This is a look at the investor, what they've invested at before, and then taking a look saying, does this actually fit you? Now, these are some of the 7 questions that dictate whether a project or something you may work on is investable. If you're not sure about it, or if you think, maybe, then I would happily invite you to upload a pitch document or a summary to the link that we provided here on the left-hand side, or just email it to me directly if whatever is easier. The address is noted on the side. I will take a look together. Obviously, we guarantee confidentiality, and yes, HP services are free to non-profit organizations before we get into any confusion here. And no, we are also not taking a percentage of the investment. Just to say, that's not happening either. So it's entirely into this project. Good. That, I believe, is already it. How am I doing on time, Jules? 16 minutes. Perfect. So we've got 10, 15 minutes on questions. Is that right?
Yes, we do.
One last announcement. On the Amsterdam side, many of you may have heard from the Amsterdam funding support we're providing to a large number of our NGOs around the world and NGOs. Starting 1st of January 2024, the investor liaison and investor scoping is now part of funding support. So in addition to the donors and the foundations and philanthropists, now we are opening up the investor community to our NGO partners.